Hi, and welcome back to Mary Trump Live. I'm Brian Karam, sitting in for Mary today, and I want to thank you for joining us. Seriously, I love being here with you guys. As usual, it's been a rough day in the country, previously known as the United States of America. Today, that unity has never been more in question, and that's because some of us would prefer living in a country guided by science and knowledge, while there are those in power who prefer the Middle Ages and abandoning the age of reason for the age of disinformation. Nothing is more indicative of that than what happened today in the Senate. All right, any day listening to Donald Trump proves the point, but today it was someone else's turn to have their ignorance on public display. Let's dive in. You know, public health in this country under Health and Human Services Secretary, yes, you know who I'm talking about, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Man, it's rapidly deteriorating. Government agencies are being gutted. Measles and other infectious diseases are on the rise. And Kennedy is spreading disinformation about vaccines and autism. Today, he appeared before the Senate Finance Committee, and he was unable to answer simple questions. And even some Republicans are saying he looked like a fool. Don't take my word for it. First, when asked about measles, Kennedy said there was nothing but, dismissive and combative. Senator Raphael Warnock told it like it was, calling him out for his dangerous policies. And take a look at Warnock's statement.
It's clear that you are carrying out your extremist beliefs, which is why you attempted to fire Dr.
Senator, we're the sickest people in the world.
Sir,
we're the sickest people on earth.
I'm speaking.
How am I a threat?
Secretary Kennedy, for the first time, we're seeing deaths from children from measles. We haven't seen that in 2 decades. We're seeing that under your watch. You are a hazard to the health of the American people.
Can I respond to that, Senator?
No, I claim back my time.
We need to wrap
You are
up.
a hazard to the health of the American people. I think that you ought to resign. And if you don't resign, the President of the United States, who put forward Operation Warp Speed, which worked, should fire you. Thank you so much.
Well, you couldn't say it any more briefly or better than that. Look, science is important in modern life, folks. My first scholarship in college was in earth science, and I've used that information and that knowledge my entire life. The people who often advocate for the natural lifestyle forget that we did have that in the past. That's when we had a life expectancy of 35 years or so. Science has improved our life. It isn't a be-all, end-all. It's a method to finding out information. And to deny that information is inherently dangerous. Senator Bernie Sanders also asked Kennedy about Donald's big, beautiful bill that would make major cuts to hospitals and Medicare. And Kennedy lied about what this would mean for those hospitals. It was Sanders. He absolutely wasn't having any of it. Take a look.
So-called big, beautiful bill threw 15 million Americans off of health care, substantially raised premiums, and is going to have a terrible impact on nursing homes, community health centers, rural hospitals all over America. Very briefly, is that really making America healthy again?
It's going to be the biggest infusion of federal dollars into rural health care in American history.
Yeah, you know why? Because you're cutting $150 billion for rural hospitals. You're putting $50 billion back. That's not an infusion. That's a loss of $100 billion.
It's wonderful how the facts have a way of speaking for themselves, while the person who's supposed to be speaking for and helping the rest of us doesn't. At the end of the day, folks, this is a very dangerous situation, probably one of the most dangerous things that this administration is doing. It is threatening the health of every American, mostly the people in rural areas who voted for Donald Trump. Finally, like everything else, Kennedy was asked during this hearing, he danced around a question about COVID deaths, claiming ignorance despite the fact that he's the HHS secretary. By this point, Democratic senators were absolutely fed up. Mark Warner of Virginia perhaps summed up Kennedy's incompetence the best. Take a look.
Would you accept the fact that 1 million Americans died from COVID?
I don't know how many died.
You're the Secretary of Health and Human Services. You don't have any idea how many Americans died from COVID?
I don't think anybody knows that because there was so much data chaos coming out of the CDC, and there were so many perverse incentives. And these are model
You don't know the answer of how many Americans died from COVID. This is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Do you think the vaccine did anything to prevent additional deaths?
Again, I would like to see the data and talk about the data.
You have had this job for 8 months, and you don't know the data about whether the vaccine saved lives?
That's the problem, is that they didn't have the data. The data by the Biden administration, absolutely dismal.
So who is politicizing? You're saying the Biden administration politicized all the data? Go back to what Senator Cantwell just said.
Fired Dr.
Go
Krauss.
to the Trump Surgeon General.
They fired Dr. Krauss. They fired all the people who questioned the orthodoxy. They fired Dr. Gruber, Dr. Krauss.
So, Mr. Chairman, the Secretary of Health and Human Services doesn't know how many Americans died from COVID. Doesn't know if the vaccine helped prevent any deaths. And you are sitting as Secretary of Health and Human Services? How can you be that ignorant?
I'd like to know that one myself. Look, there was no chaos coming out of the CDC. This isn't Biden's fault. And in fact, as Warner pointed out, Donald Trump's previous administration did a pretty effective job. That was also pointed out by Warnock in Operation Warp Speed. At least they got the stuff out to people. The numbers were accountable. They weren't in dispute until now. The politicization of this is detrimental to the health and human services of the United States and to everyone in this country, and as an extension, everyone around the world. And the U.S. health drama absolutely continues. While Kennedy was being grilled on Capitol Hill, states across the country are fighting to combat his detrimental health policies. Washington, Oregon, and California are joining forces for the West Coast Health Alliance, an organization aimed to make up for the federal government's horrible new stance on vaccines. I can't even call it a stance, it's denial. Here's KOMO News with more on this story.
Washington is joining California and Oregon state agencies to make vaccine recommendations outside of CDC guidance. New Health Secretary Dennis Worsham says science will drive the state's public health policy to help prevent the spread of disease and prevent early, avoidable deaths.
It's been concerning to watch what has been happening over a period of time under this federal administration around the CDC and starting to remove data, starting to remove some of the science-based process that we have relied on for so many years.
It was in June the three states condemned Secretary Robert F. Kennedy's removal of 17 members of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. The governors say that hinders the CDC's ability to prepare the public for respiratory virus season. Some Washington state nurses claim that could put a strain on their workload.
It was something that should remind all of us that nurses, physicians, healthcare providers are the ones that will have to deal with the consequences of bad decisions that are made at the top.
That's where this new alliance hopes to fill in the gaps as state health agencies review guidance from national medical organizations.
You know what? Let's say a few things that need to be said. First of all, thank God that RFK Jr. at least doesn't wear a red tie like all the other MAGA minions whenever we see him. It's a narrow blue tie. But in all sincerity and all seriousness, political scientists tell us that this is evidence of the United States breaking up, right? We're dissolving into different compacts in different compartments, much like we did in the Civil War. It's dissolving right in front of our faces in real time. And while it's sad, this is the point we've come to, folks. Organizations like the West Coast Alliance are going to be increasingly crucial as we have a weakened central federal government and as public health continues to decline under Donald and RFK. Employees at the HHS and National Institute of Health have been sounding the alarm on just how bad these things are going to get when it comes to public health and safety in our country. The New York Times reports that two prominent scientists filed whistleblower complaints this week. They say they've been removed from leadership positions at NIH after objecting to Donald's and RFK's efforts to undermine vaccines. They flouted court orders, withheld research money, and are politicizing the grant-making process. In a further step, more than 1,000 current and former HHS employees penned an open letter this week calling for RFK to either resign or be fired, saying he is, quote, endangering the nation's health. Yeah, absolutely, he's endangering our health. This is just a sidebar as to what's going on with the Donald Trump administration. The destruction of the United States of America has never been more apparent as a goal by the executive branch, who wants to control everything, wants to burn it all to the ground, and just, rule over the cinders. So, speaking of health, how's Donnie these days? While the whole truth of Donald's current level of physical well-being remains a mystery, one thing's for certain. He's been out of sight a lot lately, and he was certainly out of sight today. His only scheduled public appearance, a dinner with tech CEOs set for this evening. This gathering was moved from the paved up. I can't even call it a rose garden anymore. The paved over, I call it Mar-a-Lago North. It's been switched there to the state dining room, supposedly due to inclement weather. Maybe Donald was busy all day. I don't know. Working on his healthcare plan, working on the umbrellas. I don't know. But in the absence of any presidential press events, the First Lady appeared at a meeting of the new White House AI task force, and she had this to say.
Cars now steer themselves through our cities. Robots hold steady hands in the operating room. And drones are redefining the future of war. Innovations of first-generation humanoids, factory automation, and autonomous vehicles have surged from private sector investment. Every one of these advancements is powered by AI. The robots are here. Our future is no longer science fiction.
Well, I'm going to refrain from making the easy, low-hanging fruit comments. That's right, rowboats and flutes. I'm going to refuse to do that, but what I am going to say is, has anybody read an Isaac Asimov novel? Do you understand AI at all? That statement has nothing to do with the problems that we face with AI. It does state, for the record, pretty much the obvious. The sun rises in the east, and robots are holding human hands. Anyway, while Washington was talking robots, or trying to, Chicago braces for the arrival of real human soldiers, despite repeated statements by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker saying that the National Guard is not wanted or needed in Chicago. Donald is gearing up to deploy troops anyway. Time magazine reports that Pritzker received word that the occupation, I call it an invasion, but okay, occupation, could begin as early as this Friday. Time added that state and city officials are already working on ways to fight back against this unwanted federal intervention. First, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has signed an executive order directing city police not to cooperate with federal agents. Next, Governor Pritzker has stated that his troop deployments will be followed by legal action. That's the way we always go after Donald, right? This could indicate a future lawsuit challenging Donald's National Guard use, similar to ones filed in California and Washington, D.C. By the way, do you know what these troops are doing in Washington, D.C.? Well, they're picking up trash and weeding plants. Not much. And it looks like that'll never end. Anyway, regular citizens are speaking up as well. Several black churches in Chicago are planning to hold Resistance Sunday events, where they'll provide information on residents' legal rights when stopped by officers. There are also multiple protests and marches in the works. Look, folks, this is ridiculous on a number of levels. I have friends who were born and raised in the United States that are walking around with their passports because of how they look, because they look like they could be picked up as illegal immigrants. They were born here. They've lived here their entire lives, and they're afraid to go out in public because someone like Dean Cain's going to throw them to the ground and beat them to death, which we've seen untold violence against people for no reason other than the color of their skin. You certainly don't see any white Europeans who have overstayed their visas being taught or treated in this respect. Meanwhile, Donald's economy continues to be a national and a global mess. Actually, it's more of a laughing matter. AP News reports that yesterday, in a filing to the Supreme Court, that Donald said the U.S. would be on the brink of economic catastrophe if the court does not rule that sweeping tariffs he's slapped on nations around the world are legal. He always loves to go to the superlatives, doesn't he? The matter is scheduled to appear before the Supreme Court after an appeals court ruled that his tariffs constitute an illegal use of emergency power. Now, here's a video of Donald weighing in on that matter at one of his recent appearances.
We have a very, very important decision being made by the Supreme Court because our country is the richest, the strongest, the most powerful. But if for some reason some liberal court, I'm talking about the court that just ruled, where even an Obama judge voted in favor of us, which I gave him a compliment yesterday, as you know. I said that took great courage. But it's a liberal court, and it's going up to the Supreme Court, who I think have been incredible people. I think they've made very wise decisions. But the tariff question, because without the tariffs, this country is in serious, serious trouble. We've taken in almost $17 trillion of investment is coming in. Most of it is coming because of tariffs. And if for some reason somebody wanted to be politically correct, I actually think it's unpolitically correct. I think politically correct is to approve it, because there's nothing so popular as what's happened to our country. Our country is doing so well. But we had a liberal court gave us a very shocking ruling, and that ruling is basically saying that the trillions of dollars that are pouring into our country, putting us in a position like no country is anywhere in the world, that they'd like to see us that taken away. By the way, a lot of the people behind that lawsuit, that particular, are from foreign countries, I might add.
Hey, Donnie, just for the record, the country appears to be doing good in your eyes because you cleared out all the homeless out of Washington, D.C., so you don't have to look at them. Fact of the matter is, the poor have never done worse, and they're getting poorer while you're getting richer. And in case you don't understand tariffs yet, let me put it to you bluntly. Those $75 blue jillion that you think, and by the way, it increases every time he speaks. It was 10 trillion, it's 15 trillion. That money comes out of our pockets. It's being paid by American consumers. Groceries aren't cheaper, gas isn't cheaper, you're full of it. And in other economic news, Yahoo Finance reports that an upcoming jobs report will be a disappointing one for Donald, but that's okay. He'll just change the numbers. Anyway, breaking business news reporter Jay Conley says, hey, take a look. The report, which is set to be released Friday morning, is expected to show that the U.S. jobs market is slowing down. There's a shock. Additionally, the unemployment rate is expected to have risen to 4.3%. This all comes weeks after a jobs report that revised May and June numbers to be lower than previously reported. This prompted Donald to fire the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Erica McAntifer. Now, what can I say? You don't like the numbers, and when they come out, who are you going to fire next, Donnie? Or are you just going to say they're wrong and give us the numbers yourself? You simply cannot handle facts that don't jibe with the reality you've created with inside your head, and I'm sorry to say for you, your fantasy is not our reality. You're not a king. Now, let's see Donald's attempts to politicize the Federal Reserve. How's that going? Today, the New York Times reported that Donald's Justice Department has opened a criminal fraud inquiry into Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, examining whether she falsified information on a mortgage application. Cook, of course, was a member of the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors. Donald fired her last week in an ongoing attempt to install a majority of loyalists on the board. Are you shocked? Anyway, alleged mortgage fraud was given as the excuse for Cook's firing. In a statement today, Abby D. Lowell, the lawyer representing Cook, said Donald and his regime are, quote, scrambling to invent new justifications for its overreach, describing the Justice Department as, quote, perhaps the most politicized in American history. Yes, he struck out against anyone. This is Donald Trump's revenge tour. He struck out against anyone who opposed him prior to this election. He's striking out against those who opposed him after the election and anyone that doesn't agree with him. And he doesn't hear any condemning news from inside his administration because his minions are afraid to give him bad news. He only hears good news. He sets up the press, so only those who will offer him softball questions do so. And Donald, above all else, cannot handle bad news, and he'll go after anyone who says otherwise, which, by the way, is why you don't see me much in the White House these days. They simply don't want me around. I applied today to go in tomorrow or Monday for their 5 o'clock thing. I've been turned down, even though I have a hard pass. I've been turned down for every event in the White House since he's been back. And why? Because Donald doesn't want me asking him questions. And folks, it's not just me, it's anyone who will ask him a question he doesn't want to answer. So with that, yeah, we've reached today's emotional support moment. Today is September 4th, and that means it's National Wildlife Day, which encourages improved awareness of the diversity of species all around us across the planet. This National Day focuses on endangered species, preservation, and conservation efforts around the world. Zoos, aviaries, and marine sanctuaries provide a variety of ways to get involved. Visit the National Wildlife Foundation to learn more and use hashtag National Wildlife Day to post on social media. Share photos of your neighborhood wildlife or even those farther from home. So for our ESM moment today, let's take a look at a story from Tennessee about a certain house cat, quite territorial when dealing with the local wildlife, sometimes with hilarious results. Take a look.
Get him, fat cat.
The biggest one is when she's slapping the glass. Then we know there's one on the deck.
From the back and forth battles inside this Gatlinburg home to outside on the porch, this cat, affectionately named Fat Cat, isn't scared.
She showed up sometime after the wildfires, and we don't know where she came from. We thought she was pregnant, but she's just fat. She weighs probably between 16 and 18 pounds right now.
A stray cat, now a part of this family, only a fraction of the size of these black bears, but is typically the aggressor in these encounters. It's this cat that's the one striking fear into the bears that come onto this porch.
She turns into, I don't know, a tiger, a lion, whatever, and just goes after them.
These standoffs happen almost every day at this home on Pine Drive. When they spot a bear, they try to make sure this cat is inside, but Fat Cat has proven over the years she's more than capable of holding her own.
She will slap the fire out of the bear, and the bear just...
In Gatlinburg, Sam Luther, WVLT News.
I want that cat in the White House briefing room. Anyway, I want to get to your comments and questions. Midas Cheryl gifted one Mary Trump Media membership. I want to thank you, Midas Cheryl, for that. Trail Goat, Trump has hand measles. I don't know what Donald Trump has. I'm not a doctor. However, I will tell you from covering the last administration and this administration, there is something definitely wrong with Donald Trump. And it will all come to pass after he leaves office. It will all come out. It will all come to light. And those who protected him, and I'm thinking of Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, the other little beady-eyed guy, and several other people may end up in jail because at the end of the day, the American public has been lied to. RFK Jr. is a wholly unqualified POS. Well, yeah, he's not a doctor. He's never studied. He doesn't know what he's talking about, but he thinks he knows more than anybody else because he saw a YouTube video or was on Joe Rogan's show. I can't tell you where this comes from. But folks, this is just a denial of science and knowledge. How can we progress as a species if we don't use the scientific method and if we don't test our results, but peer-reviewed study, and then move forward? You end up in the Middle Ages. We are in a technological nightmare, a technological Middle Ages. Good day from South Australia. Thank you, Mark. Good day to you too, sir. I do like to throw a shrimp on a Barbie every once in a while. I know it's a cliche, but I got to say it. Anyway, is Cheryl Hines still married to this clown? I believe she is, and I believe there have been several people, in fact, I know of a few, who have warned her about the problems inherent in RFK Jr. Rob Campbell says it's painful to listen to Kennedy, and I mean his lies more than his voice. I look, man, I'm not going to take a cheap shot at the man's voice and the physical maladies that the former heroin abuser and worm-ridden guy, brain worm-ridden guy has. But I will tell you that, yeah, it's difficult to watch anyone sit there and just spout the lies that he and most people in this administration spout. Anytime Caroline Leavitt, for example, is in the White House press briefing room, it's useless. She's a PEP secretary, she's not a press secretary. She's there to cheer Donald, and that's what most of his administration does. As I've said, and I have good sources inside the White House who tell me that he simply will not hear bad news. He watches the press briefings, and he only wants good news. And here's the best example of that. The day the Supreme Court ruled against him 9-0, he was asked about that in the Oval Office, and he looked to Stephen Miller, and he said to Stephen, "We won that one, right?" And then Miller says, "Yes, absolutely, we won 9-0, and then continued to lie, and not one person in the press pushed back against the lies. Deborah, member for 1 month, you rock the world, Mary Trump, and I love your heart, your show. We love you too. Trail Goat, Uncle JFK would be so ashamed. Yeah, here's another little thing. I met, I think RFK Sr. would be ashamed. I met Robert Kennedy Jr. not too long before he died, actually. And he was at an event where I was a small child, and my grandfather and my parents were there. You've often heard the saying, when someone walks into a room, it became brighter. That was RFK Sr. I was just 8 years old, I think, at the time. And he walked into the room, and for some reason, I just felt like that room was brighter. And when I see his son, I think, man, it just got dimmer. Donna McMullen, it is like Donald. Put all the most horrible people in the country in a hat, and he did a draw for his cabinet. It's actually, you're right, but it's the horrible people who otherwise would not have a voice, who are demonstrative in their beliefs and will swear fealty to Donald Trump to get to their own what they want to do and make sure that they get it done. They have their own agenda, and they will profess fealty to Donald Trump to attain their agenda. That's what it's all about. Evelyn Coburn, he has to go. He's not fit for the job. Kennedy has no clue what he's doing. Yes, indeed, you are correct. He sat smugly at one point in time in the Senate hearings today. You see him lean back and he goes, "How can?" And we showed the clip there. How can you say I'm the problem? Well, you're the problem because you're a liar and you don't understand scientific facts. Heather Ferris is a new member. Thank you, Heather. Marianne Ozinski, I hope I pronounced that right. That worm has completely ate his brain. I don't think they got it out. I know that it was said that it was gotten out years ago, but you can't convince me. I'm surprised he's still talking. Catherine McKay, polio, diphtheria, plague, etc., eradicated thanks to science. Some cancers are not a death sentence due to science. Trump's cabinet picks live in a non-reality world. They're so dumb. Oh, Trump cabinet's picks live in a non-reality world. They're so dumb. Well, again, science is what has allowed us to achieve the results in our society that we have. Folks, you wouldn't be able to feed 8 billion people without modification of crops. The first corn wasn't the way it is. The first wheat wasn't the way it is. Selective and I guess you would say selective planting of seeds gave us what we have today. And without the ability to employ science in our life, there wouldn't be 8 billion people. We'd be starving. Carol Thomason, Melania is a phony. She has it good. She can go out and have fun. I'm still not sure what it is she said too much. I mean, it sounded like, A, B, C, D, and there was nothing of import there or nothing of necessity in what she said. And there was no addressing of any of the issues that come up around AI. It was just gibberish published by her staff and spoken by her. You think Andrea Cohen, I think Melania is, and I can't see that. I'm sorry to say I don't know what that is, but whatever it is, you're probably right. Caroline Gravel, $10. Brian, Can out-of-state residents fly to a pro-vaccine state from Texas, get a COVID and flu shot at one of their pharmacies? Well, we have to stay there until the vaccines take effect. Good question, Caroline. And if you're in Texas, that's an excellent question. And more importantly, I think that it's going to depend entirely. I think you'll be able to go to a state and get a vaccine. I don't know if you want to stay there until it takes effect. How would you know? But in fact, during the COVID crisis, I remember there were people that were traveling from into Maryland from other states to get vaccinated. And people weren't asking it at some point in time that you did have to show a state ID, but in other points in time you didn't. So they were taking people in at the CVS down the street from where I live, and people were getting their vaccinations, though they were from Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, where they weren't available. Rhonda Price, Melania knows about rowboats, but not robots. But I like the joke. Anyway, Lori Stone, how long has she been in the United States? Still can't speak English. More importantly, how is it that, it's the whole immigration issue. An anchor baby or someone coming into this country who's white has a greater chance of becoming a citizen than if you're brown or black. And that's just a sad fact. Trust the Dog 2. Are the rowboats near the electric boats surrounded by sharks? That's right, and eels. I still like that, but would you rather be eaten by a shark or electrocuted? There's the question, what we have to go with today. And the answer is Melania. Anyway, in the middle of nowhere, $20. Hi, Brian. Good to see you. Zup with the nerds. Miss you guys. RFK is an entitled idiot. I want a hat that says Bernie was right all along. Cover-uption. It's all about the bottom line being the bottom line. Well, thank you, the nerds. I hope we're all living and doing well. I know I love getting together with the nerds as much as anybody, and I sure love being back here with you guys. Bernie was right all along. I'm waiting for that hat as well. But you are right about it's all about the bottom line. If you take a look at every policy that's taken by the Trump administration, what was the report last week or 2 days ago, maybe it was $5 billion taken in by the Trump family since the beginning of this administration. It's all a money grab, folks. Every single bit of it. In the middle of nowhere, gifted one Mary Trump Media membership. Thank you. Elise H. gifted one Mary Trump Media membership. Thank you. Blue Lady gifted one Mary Trump Media membership. Thank you, Blue Lady. And Donna McMullen, Brian, have we actually seen the tariff money? No, we haven't seen the tariff money. That's another bunch of, look, here's a clue. When Donald Trump's moving his lips and making words, if it's not gibberish, it's a lie. There's only one fact that I've been able to see that is undisputed about Donald Trump, and that is his date of birth. Everything else, man, there's alternative stories, alternative facts, according to, the former members of his administration, the first administration. Everything with him is what he wants it to be and not what it actually is. Carol Good, trillions are not pouring in. It's already here. It's just moving. Well, you got that point, right? Moving from our pockets is taxation without representation. I do remember, I actually took history. I do remember when a bunch of colonists in Boston, had a little party because they were taxing tea without representation. And this is a great example of taxation without representation. And what was it that Patrick Henry said about that? Oh, yeah, it's tyranny. Reginald Johnson, lying, dementia, sociopath Trump is an enemy to mankind. I think lying, dementia, first of all, I look, again, I'm not a doctor and I don't know if he has dementia. I can only tell you that he acts like he does and that he confabulates things and that he confuses things and that he lies incessantly and he can't keep one lie straight from the other. For example, on the Venezuela incident, if those were drug dealers, we used to arrest them in interdiction and put them in jail and charge them and have due process. We didn't just blow them up because we wanted to make sure they weren't actually tourists or innocent civilians going about their business. But we've heard about 3 or 4 stories now. So it's not just the sociopath Trump. It's everyone in his administration who lies and are the enemy of mankind. And that particular action in Venezuela could well be a war crime, or at least it could be seen in the criminal court. the International Criminal Court, but we'll see if that ever happens. Joanne Hyda Hopkins, BS bunch of it. He still doesn't understand what tariffs are. Well, again, this is because we lack education in this country. And it started with George W. Bush's No Child Left Behind, which means that every child was left behind because they started teaching to tests rather than teaching children the portions that are important about education, like critical thinking. So we have left tariffs out of it, except for those who have decided to go to college and get a degree in business or accounting. And the fact of the matter is that if you don't understand how tariffs work, you are the reason why we're paying higher prices. Reginald Johnson, tell it, Brian. Oh, yeah, I'll preach it, baby. What do you want? What do you want? Angela O'Reilly, I have to find a new doctor because mine is a Trump supporter and he will do what they say. It's frightening to me the number of doctors I've run into that are that way. In fact, I know a couple of them that are just vaccination deniers. And I go, well, you've had the vaccines, right? Oh, yeah, of course I have to. Well, how come you get to have them and we don't? Well, they don't work. Well, if they don't work, why do you take them? And by the way, everybody's still taking, when you grow up, you get the rubella vaccine, diphtheria, all that kind of stuff, and all those wonderful vaccines that we used to have to line up for in school. When I was a kid, nobody said anything about not getting the vaccinations. There was polio there were still people, by the way, Mitch McConnell suffered from polio. It was still vibrant in our memories in the 60s, in the mid 60s. So when we went to school, we lined up in the auditorium, we got our vaccinations with an air gun, we went back to class and nobody said anything because we understood why we had them. Today, you want to deny the facts, and I'm fine if you don't want to take a vaccine. You should, but don't put the rest of us at risk, please. Jane Shira, $9.99. Neurodivergent people such on the autism spectrum and ADHD are awesome fee. I don't know what that means. My brother was autistic. I have an aunt who's autistic, and I've been told I have ADHD. No, actually, my sister does, and my brother did, but I've never had, it's in my family, and it has nothing to do with vaccines. I know that. Susan Thompson, $20. Damn, we need you, Brian, in the White House press corps. No one better than you. Well, thank you. I'd like to think that at least I could ask a question. My mentors in my life, starting out with Helen Thomas and Sam Donaldson. And I tell this story often. The first day I was in the White House during the Reagan administration, Helen knew who I was before I got there. And that's because she knew damn well everything. And people used to treat her with a lot of respect. Joe Lockhart, one of the press secretaries for Clinton, told me that he often brought her tea and donuts, coffee and donuts, as she sat upstairs and watched everything in upper press and refused to leave. And she told me when I walked in, she said, Brian, there are in the first row in the White House briefing room, there were 7 people there with more than 200 years experience. Listen to all of them and learn from them. And it was Sam Donaldson who told me, and I'll teach you how to get your question heard. He had that wonderful voice that I adopted as my football coach's voice, which would scare the hell out of the little kids when I asked the high schoolers when I told them to take a lap. But those two were my guide into the White House, and we don't have those type of mentors today. And it's a sad state of affairs. The White House press is the worst I've seen it in my lifetime, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. Diane Richards, $10. You said you didn't want to go there, but you also brought up Asimov, so I must. Toy boat. No, rowboat. Toy boat. Now I'm doing Chevy Chase. Yes, I know I brought up Asimov. The 3 laws of robotics, which if AI had today, there's a real fear of what AI will become. And that's because it'll become the worst of us or the best of us. But by God, it's going to be an amalgamation of all of us. And that is kind of frightening if we don't react better to ourselves. Greg Bender, $2. Where's my refund from pharma industry fee? I don't know. I want to know where's that Doge money that Donald Trump keeps promising us. Hey, would you like 2,000? I mean, he sends these emails out daily. Where, would you like a Doge refund? Would you like $2,000? Sure, we would, Donnie. Where are you going to dig that up from? Social Security? Because it makes no sense what you're telling us. Susan Thompson, $5. Brian, still waiting for an ESM with you rocking out on your guitar. Hey, baby, there are some of those on the, I think they're on YouTube. Some of us playing the band, the Rhythm Bandits playing out at a couple of events in the Washington, D.C. area. And I love it. That's my ESM. That is mine. That's how I keep my sanity is either playing with a band or stand-up comedy. But I get my stand-up comedy these days in the White House because I can't take any of it seriously anymore. It's way off the charts bad. It's just horrible. So laugh or cry. We'll be here all week. Try the veal. I want to thank everybody for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. It's always a pleasure to be here with you guys. I really thank you for having me here, and I surely enjoy it. So we'll catch you next time. This is Mary Trump Live. I'm your guest host, Brian Karam. Thanks for joining us.